Our next presenter needs no introduction to our community. Everyone knows Hanna Gobezi. Her Excellency Ana Gomez received a law degree from the University of Lisbon in 1979, followed by a diploma in European Community Law in 1981, and another diploma in law from the Institut International des Droits de l'Homme in Strasbourg in 1989. I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation. Ms. Gomez has served in various official capacities. She served as diplomatic advisor to the President of Portugal from 1982 to 1986. Portugal won the game yesterday. And was posted as the permanent mission to the United Nations and International Organization in Geneva from 1986 to 1989. She served in the Portuguese Embassy in Tokyo from 89 to 91, and in London from 1991 to 94. Ms. Gomez has held a number of important positions representing European countries, including service as a member of the Portuguese delegation to the Middle East peace process during Portugal's EU presidency in 1992, as a member of the Special Political Affairs Office, East Timor Dossier Timor, of the Foreign Ministry from 1994 to 1995, and as a member of Portugal's permanent mission to the UN in New York, as head of the Office of the Secretary for European Affairs from 1995 to 96, and as coordinator of the Portuguese delegation to the Security Council from 1997 to 1998, and as head of Section of Interests and later Ambassador of Portugal to Jakarta from 1999 to 2003. Since 2002, Ms. Gomez has been a member of the National Executive and Political Executive of the PS, or the Socialist Party, and a member of the European Parliament since 2004. As most of you know her, most notably, she was chief of the European Union Election Observation Mission to Ethiopia in 2005. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to today's keynote speaker, Her Excellency Ana Gomez.
Thank you, dear friends. I'm very pleased to be here. It's my first time in California. It's my first time in LA. Unfortunately, I'm leaving today. And I know that so many Ethiopians will be gathering here. It's really my pleasure to be here with you. And I want to thank the Ethiopian American Council and also congratulate the Ethiopian Sports Federation for this major gathering. And I'd like in particular to thank Ato Abebe for his efforts and his assistance in allowing my meeting with you all here today. I think a lot has been already said about the electoral process in Ethiopia, the commendable campaign, the enthusiastic and massive participation of the people, their victory. I mean victory, because it was a victory for the people of Ethiopia. That they want change and to show that they are ready and eager for democracy. So no matter what those who try to snatch that victory, it is a victory, and you cannot allow it to let it be snatched from the people. And of course, a lot has been said also about the atrocities that were unleashed since May of last year. I therefore will not dwell on the facts that you all know very well. I would rather share with you my reflections on the significance of that, the 15th of May, on the post-election crisis, and what should be done to overcome it. And I'm confident that with your commitment those who are fighting inside Ethiopia for democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and freedom will be successful. What happened in Ethiopia in the aftermath of May 2005 legislative elections is far more serious than a banal exercise of vote rigging, as we witness under anti-democratic governments elsewhere in the world, and indeed during the previous elections in Ethiopia. I'm not talking only about stolen votes. What is happening here? Right. Okay. This is falling. Okay. I think we have to understand the many dimensions of this post-election crisis. And indeed the repression that was unleashed by the rulers, despicable and condemnable as it is, it's only part of the story. What is at stake for the people of Ethiopia, and indeed for all those who peace and democratic loving forces all over the world, is the derailment of the democratization process and the reversal of the values of peaceful discourse, national reconciliation, peaceful transition, unity and brotherhood among ethnic groups, and among communities. So what happened there is indeed very serious and goes behind Ethiopia itself, and gives a very negative message to Africa and to the world. That's also one reason why I believe that not just Ethiopians, but everybody else in the world who is committed to democracy, the rule of law, good governance, human rights, must pay attention to the situation in Ethiopia and must help those who are fighting for a peaceful transition towards democracy in Ethiopia. I mentioned this was a victory despite all the pain and all the feeling of shattered expectations of the people. Sorry. Okay, this way. Forward. I think indeed there were tremendous gains that were achieved in what led us to this May 15th. And the extraordinary demonstration of commitment to democracy, of preparation towards democracy by the peaceful way in which people came massively to vote and to assert their choice for the country. And these are even more important gains when we look at the historical and political context of the Ethiopian society. You all know much better than I do that there was violence for centuries. There was especially political violence, and even the transitions, the earlier transitions, had left the Ethiopian society very skeptical about the possibility of peaceful transition of power, and the notion that it would always be accompanied with violence, or as a result of armed confrontation. So I think thanks to the efforts that were deployed by the country's democratic forces in this particular campaign, and of course that was based in work done beforehand. In a way, that skepticism was overcome, and people believe that this time these elections would be different, and that's why they come out massively to vote. This is very important for you here in the communities abroad, in the diaspora, to understand. I know that there was also much skepticism in the communities abroad. People would say, well, this is going to be like before. But this time, the people believed it was possible. I think the presence of international observers made a contribution to that. I think very important was indeed this lively broadcasted debates that really allowed the leaders of the opposition to communicate with the people. I was stunned days before the election, going anywhere in Ethiopia, outside Addis Ababa, in the countryside, stopping the car, talking to shepherds in the middle of the mountains near Gondar, and everybody knew that the elections were going to take place. Everybody knew where they were supposed to be voting. Everybody had, through their transistors, no matter how poor people were, no matter how far away from the cities, they had heard these lively broadcasted debates. They had heard the leaders of the opposition speak. This had caught their imagination. People were going to vote. It was so clear to us even before the 15th of May, and it really was a most extraordinary demonstration. One of my colleagues, member of the European Parliament, who also came to Ethiopia at that time, we had also a short-term delegation of the European Party, cross-party. All the parties of the European Parliament were represented there, about 10 members. He told us on the 16th of May that he had, it's a German member of the Parliament, that he, watching how in Europe also the levels of abstention are growing in many countries, after having seen this extraordinary display of faith in democracy by the people of Ethiopia, he told us, look, I regained my faith in democracy by watching this extraordinary day in Ethiopia. So these are gains that you cannot allow to be lost. And you have to indeed realize and make it known that indeed millions in Ethiopia were using the ballot box as an instrument for change in government. And even more importantly, they know what they want. And they want, obviously, a government that is accountable to the people, a democratic, an independent, and a united Ethiopia, and a stable society where the values of mutual respect and national reconciliation and justice and the rule of law will be upheld. This is clearly the message that it was not just me, I was just there having a team of about 200 very skilled, experienced observers from all European countries that we watched. And what we found out, our conclusions, actually coincide very much with the conclusions that are in the final report also of the mission of President Carter. This is a point that I want to stress to you. It's important to here, in particularly in the United States, to stress that point. Our conclusions about what happened in Ethiopia during this electoral process actually coincide very much with the conclusions of the Carter Center. And I think this is important, especially when you look forward to the kind of breakthrough that was achieved with this passing of the bill in the Committee for International Affairs, the 5680 bill, because there is indeed an American analysis by the people of the Carter Center that actually coincide very much, and this should help you exactly not allow the efforts of those who want to derail that bill in the process that is to be followed, and actually make the case that indeed all those who are committed for democracy and human rights and justice in this country, whatever the party, have to work together, because this is what is at stake in Ethiopia. And it's, of course, it's about Ethiopia, about the Ethiopian people, about not frustrating people who show this commitment to peaceful and democratic change through the ballot box. It's much more than Ethiopia. It's the whole continent of Africa. Ethiopia is a very important country in the world and in Africa in particular. It's the headquarters of the African Union. It's the second largest country in Africa in terms of population. And it's, of course, a major civilization, not just in African terms, but in world terms, of course, with all its ancient roots. That was so clear to all of us. So I would like to make to submit to you that indeed we have a lot of work to do, those of us who understand what is at stake, and you, members of the Ethiopian diaspora, have a very important role to play. I was very moved by the different statements, I think, that we heard before. They complement each other very well. I was very moved also in particular by the statement by Professor Alemayo, highlighting this responsibility you will have. And I feel that I also have, because I've been there. Those of us who have been there, we cannot neglect and we cannot stay silent. We have to join efforts to campaign for democracy in Ethiopia, because it's about the bigger picture. It's not just about Ethiopia. It's about the kind of world we live in. It's about a better world, and there can't be a better world without democracy, rule of law, and human rights respected by all regimes. And I must say that in this respect, we have a lot of work to do to indeed dispel the notions that some governments, not just here in the United States, also in Europe, have about where their interests lie regarding Ethiopia. We have to make them understand that they cannot have as an ally in the fight against terrorism a government who terrorizes its own people. It is, I'm particularly disturbed, and Greg in his statement also clearly pointed out to this, the latest developments and the coming developments in the region in what concerns Somalia, that may and will have a very important influence in Ethiopia, and that influenciate very much the perception here in the administration of the United States of America about the value of Ethiopia and of the current regime in Ethiopia. I must tell you, I'm very worried with what I know from different sources, and I must tell you very good inside sources, that what is happening now in Somalia, and I agree absolutely with Greg, we have a real problem of terrorism in a failed state that Somalia is, definitely. But what the recent developments, in my opinion, are very much the result of the fact that the Ethiopian involvement, the Meles regime involvement, actually backfired and made the people from Somalia actually rally against those forces that were being backed by the United States of America, and have actually put the current Islamic courts regime in control of the situation. And I fear that more is being planned, more involvement of Ethiopia, soldiers, army there, more reliance on the part of the US on intelligence provided by the Ethiopian regime, and that will have also very backfiring consequences in a way that could be dramatic, not just for Somalia, not just for Ethiopia, for the whole region, escalating a situation of possible another interregional war, and definitely not serving our purposes in defeating terrorists, namely the terrorists of Al-Qaeda. I do believe that indeed we must do what we can to make the governments who are determined in the fight against terrorism see that they cannot have as allies in that fight those, as I said, who terrorize their own people. And indeed, the role of the Ethiopian community here is very important. Your role here in contacting your representatives in the Congress, in the Senate, the authorities making their case, and indeed, as also it has been already pointed out by Greg, in not allowing the propaganda of the regime to actually equate those who are fighting for democracy in Ethiopia with, and to try to associate them somehow with terroristic purposes. In this respect, I must say, I also welcome very much the moves towards unity that the different political organizations of the opposition have been making. They're very important. I do believe that indeed the way of any oppressors, of any anti-democratic regime to rule is actually to divide and rule. Division is obviously a very important tactics of the current regime, and therefore those Ethiopians who are truly committed for democracy should understand that and should not play into the hands of the regime by continuing the way of any oppressors, of any anti-democratic regime to rule is actually to divide and rule. Division is obviously a very important tactics of the current regime, and therefore those Ethiopians who are truly committed for democracy should understand that and should not play into the hands of the regime by continue to be divided on whatever lines, ethnic or religious or even petty political divisions. This is a time for all Ethiopians to come together, to forget natural ideological party line divides, come together on the struggle for democracy, for human rights, and for the rule of law in Ethiopia, and not allowing, indeed, the regime to divide you, to blame parts of you of being associated with terrorism. Therefore, it is very important that in your public pronouncements you clearly disassociate your struggle from any thing that could be tainted with terroristic activities. I must stress as well that I do very much understand what this refreshing statement by Mena earlier on meant when she was highlighting the importance of working at the grassroots and indeed our 3 C's, communication, cooperation, and collective action are absolutely necessary and interlinked. And communication is the first one of them. It's communication between the leaders and the grassroots, communication between the communities here abroad and those who are inside the country fighting for democracy. Communication and cooperation, they lead indeed to collective action. And let me submit to you that one field where I believe the communities abroad could make their resources available to make a big difference is indeed in this need also to communicate to the outside world what is really happening in Ethiopia. Greg said it. The regime is also taking advantage of the fact that outside the Ethiopian communities and the Friends of Ethiopia, long-standing Friends of Ethiopia, I see Professor Pankhurst there, apart from these people, the regime is actually counting on the wall of silence. And this is something that we need to change. And today's world is actually gives us enormous possibilities. That's the beauty of globalization. We have blogs. They can't jam all the blogs. We have also for communication. And I wish to tell you, yes, please invest in sending people, journalists, whoever, whatever the cover to Ethiopia, so that they can document what is really happening there and bring out to the outside world the images of what is happening there. Because those of us who have been there, who have talked to the people, we know. But we need to communicate it to others. And I just saw, for instance, a film, and I wish to recommend you to get hold of that. A film that was shown in the European Parliament on the 15th of May this year, in a session we organized to commemorate the 1 year passed from the elections. Extraordinary dedicated people from the Ethiopian Human Rights Council managed to get hold of a film of another massacre that occurred in the Kaliti prison just a couple of days after the November massacre, the 1st of November massacre. And that film was actually done by elements of the Ethiopian regime inside the prison. You know better than I how good they are at documenting everything. But this person was so appalled that managed to pass this to the hands of the Ethiopian Human Rights Council. It's a massacre that was committed inside the prison. And we saw it in the European Parliament. I think the audience in America need to see that as well. And much more could be done in bringing to the outside world what is really happening. I'm sure you will have no shortage of imagination and no shortage of means, actually, to make sure that what is happening is going to be shown to the outside world. And let me tell you, there's a very important moment now with this trial that is going on, this fake trial, this kangaroo court. It's not, let me tell you, it's not that I don't know, I know very well, and I have high respect for the many qualified jurists that you have in Ethiopia, for the many able, serious judges and magistrates and policemen that you have in Ethiopia. I've met several of them. But I know that they are not allowed to do an independent job in this system, in this devious system. that is run by the current regime. I know that they cannot be independent the same way that Ato Kemal Bedri could not be independent at the head of the NAD. And indeed, I was moved when, at the request of Professor Alemayo, we all honored those who are in the front line now in the prisons of Ethiopia, and namely those elected opposition members who are in prison, but not only them. And I feel particularly responsible for them. That's also why I'm here. I feel responsible for them because I know that I helped them, I helped to persuade them to stay until the end of the process, to not disenfranchise the people of Ethiopia who wanted to vote, to not boycott the elections. I know I played that role on behalf of the European Union, and they were telling me, well, this is not going, they're not never going to allow our people to really have a fair outcome of the elections. They knew that. They knew they were exposing themselves and their families to tremendous intimidation, danger, but they did it. They are indeed absolutely heroes for Ethiopia, and I would like to pay homage to them, to people like Professor Mesfin Voldemarian, who's 76, who is in prison, outrageous, campaigning for human rights in Ethiopia since ever. Behano Nega, who really caught the imagination of the people of Ethiopia like no one else, I must say. Engineer Ayla Chauvel, so many others. And not just opposition leaders, but journalists, human rights activists, activists for development, members of the Global Call for Action Against Poverty, and so many others. It's not just the 600 that indeed we are talking about. There are many thousands that we don't even know about. In June, don't forget, I was there on the 8th of June. I went to the hospital. I saw terrible things that will always be in my mind and will always give me strength to continue campaigning until I see indeed the wish of the people of Ethiopia realized. And I was there in the next days when about 5,000 people were arrested. Kids, I interviewed kids who were picked up at home in the middle of the night. They were not arrested in the middle of trouble in the streets. They were picked up at home in the middle of the night. Kids, 13, 15, 18-year-old kids. And we were able to actually, in June, over 1 month, to make these people be released. This time it should also be possible. This is, I think, a first objective of your struggle, is to release these people and to denounce this fake justice that is being cooked now in Addis Ababa. And, make sure that your people, when they are showing up, and I know these prisons are full of strength. Commissioner Louis Michel, European Commissioner Louis Michel, about 2 months ago, he went there and he managed to persuade Prime Minister Meles to go to prison and visit them. And he came back and he said in the European Parliament, I'm not revealing anything that is secret, he said in the European Parliament that he found these people full of strength, fully determined. He saw Behano Nega, he saw Ayla Chauvel, he saw Professor Mesfin, he saw them full of strength, determined to fight, not willing to be thwarted by this regime. So it's only fair that indeed you will make everything possible to expose this trial, to make people know that these trials indeed are not fair justice, and to compel the regime of Prime Minister Meles to liberate these outstanding leaders of the Ethiopian society. I think this should be a very important objective in your struggle. I know there is much more to be done, and I could only second the calls that were made here earlier, that you, Ethiopian community in the United States, get more involved in bringing the message to your representatives in the U.S. Congress and Senate. And I wish to also recommend you that you work across party lines. This is not an issue to be ideological and having a narrow party shift. The beauty of this HR 8650 is exactly that it is the product of a cross-party effort and was approved by unanimity in the Committee of International Affairs. And this is exactly the reason why I'm also here, and we in the European Parliament do exactly that. We have a cross-party stand for democracy in Ethiopia, and we want to indeed engage with our fellows in our national parliaments, in the U.S. Congress, to bring the message to our governments that they cannot continue to have a very narrow attitude regarding the regime in Ethiopia, that they cannot be misled by the smart rhetoric of the regime that talks about democracy, development, human rights, but actually in practice does exactly the opposite. And I would like to tell you that I think I already mentioned to you how your unity is essential, and how it is essential indeed that you do not allow your organization in support of the fight of your people inside the country to be in any way tainted or associated with terrorism. Definitely, as Greg has explained, this is exactly what the Meles regime will try to seek, to discredit you, to discredit those who fight for democracy in Ethiopia. And I'm indeed heartened by this new alliance. It should be inclusive. It should have clearly an agenda that does not play into the ethnic or other divides. This is exactly the strength of this oppressing regime. And the important thing is that indeed you show unity, and you show commitment for a peaceful Ethiopia. And you do not allow the regime to indeed keep your country from being developed. As it has been said, I also have this clear perception that Ethiopia should not be condemned to poverty. Ethiopia has all the elements to be a very successful and developing country, because first and foremost, the most important wealth of any nation is its people, and the people of Ethiopia are outstanding. So this is a time indeed to be inclusive and to bring everybody into the fold of this struggle for democracy in Ethiopia, and reaching out to the civil society, to religious groups, to peasants groups, to youth and women associations, to representatives of the independent media, business community. All these people should be together, intellectuals, which you have so many and good. All groups of elderly people. Everybody should be included in this effort for democracy in Ethiopia. And of course, let me point out, this is not a time anymore to score points among party organizations. The elections are gone. This is a time to to cross the party lines and identify where the fight is. And let me tell you, EPRDF, for sure, they also have very good people who are committed genuinely for Ethiopia. You must be able to bring into this fight also these good people who are also in EPRDF. Everybody has to be included and understand that in order to have democracy is to have everybody be feeling a winner. Democracy is about how to solve the crisis, the problems, the political problems by peaceful means. And EPRDF must also be part of a democratic solution in Ethiopia, clearly. And I think it's in your wisdom, you will know better how to achieve it. And let me tell you another thing that I was struck, and I know that I'm here running the risk that again be blamed by the Meles regime of interfering in things that go behind the election observation. I don't have any problem of interfering in the sense that it's about democracy, human rights, the rule of law. And I cannot never understood, and this is obviously not the way we in Europe understand the election observation, as if it is some technical job completely dissociated from the very fundamental issues of democracy. Election is a crucial step towards democracy. It doesn't exhaust democracy, but without fair election you can't have democracy. And the reason to have democracy is because you want to have an accountable, good government, good rule of law, and human rights respected. So no way you can actually observe elections forgetting or neglecting the fact that people are being shot in the streets. It's absolutely no way. So running the risk of actually going behind, let me share with you my perceptions about other problems affecting currently Ethiopia and the way this regime has been indeed so much hurting Ethiopia. And I think this ought to be important in the way also you, the opposition forces who fight for democracy, structure your discourse and your strategy. I think, well, mention has been made of the Eritrea regime. I got this feeling that actually these are regimes that are two rulers that are at each other's throats, but they actually need each other and support each other very much. Because one provides the excuse for the appalling regime that the other holds in each country. And I must say that actually in this respect what is happening in Eritrea, for all that I know, it's even worse than what is happening in Ethiopia in terms of human rights and abuse of the people. And let me tell you that I think in the same way you should not allow that an opportunistic involvement of the Meles regime in Somalia in a way to make it himself endear to the US government will have tremendous backfiring consequences for your own country and for the whole region. You should also see that the way the regime has been, for instance, framing the attitude towards Eritrea is actually harming Ethiopia much more than serving it. I was struck, I'll be very candid with you, I was struck that everybody was hooked on Badme and everybody at the same time was neglecting the important thing for Ethiopia, which would be to have access to the sea. This is something that in which the Ethiopian community, namely here in the United States, should consider how to address this. And of course, I don't think there is any way to have access to the sea than by a diplomatic solution, diplomatic, peaceful solution. But this is an area where I believe the people of Ethiopia need to see an alternative to the policies of the current regime, which are actually very detrimental to Ethiopian interests, in my opinion, and which are also and which also creates indeed a problem for the perception about Ethiopia internationally. And there's much more could be done if indeed the communities abroad would also try to link these aspects to the to the overall strategy for ensuring a peaceful transition towards democracy in Ethiopia. I will end telling you, I told you before that you Ethiopians are not alone, and many voices in the United States, in Europe, indeed are alerted to the situation. But we need to do more, much more, to alert more people, and in particular to alert our governments. I rely on, and I know that most of the effort has to be done by Ethiopians, because no matter what the international community will do, the important players, the important actors are the people of Ethiopia. And I would like to tell you that my feeling is, by talking to many people inside Ethiopia, that yes, they rely on your support, the community in the diaspora. The interaction between those fighting inside and those of you outside with freedom is very important. And you need indeed to find ways to do more in a more imaginative way to indeed support those who are fighting for freedom inside Ethiopia. I want to tell you that any foreigner like myself, who had no prior knowledge of Ethiopia, who had never set foot in Ethiopia, when they come to your country, cannot but be tremendously impressed with the beauty of the landscape, with the beauty of the people, and I don't mean just the physical beauty, the strengths that you feel. And when it comes to dig on the historical roots of Ethiopia, that admiration is even stronger. So I'm absolutely sure that this regime cannot continue much longer. The only way for this regime to continue in power is actually to commit even more crimes. And therefore, you need to step up and make sure that these crimes do not go unnoticed outside Ethiopia and do not go unpunished. Therefore, you're part of the real stakeholders in the struggle for democracy, rule of law, and human rights in Ethiopia. And I know that you will do what is required. I want to thank you. I want to tell you that this gathering is indeed proof that the giant is awakening. And I want to tell you that I'm very happy to be here with you, and that I'll be always willing to join forces with all those of you who want to indeed support the cause of the justice and democracy in Ethiopia. I know that the struggle is hard. It continues. Long live Ethiopia.